and to speak on our two better than one initial combination therapy in type 2 diabetes mellitus. I welcome speaker Dr. Ipshita Mishra from Odisha. She is an assistant professor, Department of Endocrinology, MKCG Medical College, Berhampur. And to chair the session, I would like to invite Dr. Shattoki Manna, endocrinologist, and Dr. Shottam Chakraborty, endocrinologist. I welcome speaker ma'am and chairpersons.
So good afternoon, everybody. To set the podium, basically, if you see the ADA 2012 guidelines, pre-2012, you would have found that in the management of diabetes, there was a step-up approach. When the sugar is high, use one drug, and then if it is not working, use two, and then if it is still not working, use three, and then finally go for complex regimens. And now if you see the post-2018 guidelines, they have totally changed. There is a cafeteria approach, there is a paradigm change in that. So now we need to understand from madam that whether the previous was correct or right now what we are doing, or at all the idea of hit hard and hit fast really works or not. So madam, please.
Thank you, sir. I thank you, the chairpersons, for your introduction, and I thank the Howrah Town Diabetes Society for giving me this opportunity. Well, we have had sessions right from the morning where we have been discussing about the complications related to diabetes and what further approaches can be done. But at the end of today's pre-lunch session, we will be taking up this whether an initial combination therapy in T2DM is advantageous than a better one. Now this is important because ultimately we do not want our T2DM patients to land up in the multitude of complications. Now to begin with, DeFronzo proposed this hypothesis of omnious octet, 8 pathogenic mechanisms which leads to the field setting in of the hyperglycemia in a T2DM patient, right from reduction in the insulin secretion from the beta cells, increment in the glucagon production from the alpha cells, increased glucose output from the livers, decreased incretin effect, increased lipolysis, altered glucose disposal at the level of peripheries, everything culminates into hyperglycemia. But this does not stop here. T2DM follows the reverse of Occam's razor. Occam's razor means you go in a single path, you reach a single etiology. But T2DM does not follow this. Following DeFronzo's proposal, there was the hypothesis of dirty dozen, where 4 or hypotheses were added which can lead to hyperglycemia. That is alteration in the catecholamines, including dopamine, RAS, testosterone. It did not stop there, and then came up the treacherous 13, where along with the pathogenesis of dirty dozen, there was add-on of the gut-derived serotonin. And now we have the fatalist 14, including everything iron overload. It may not stop here, and in the upcoming time we get more proposed pathogenic mechanisms. Now why am I talking of all these? This is important because we want to achieve our glycemic parameters, though we know that for causing T2DM, it is the decrease in the beta cell functions and decrease in insulin secretion and increased insulin resistance at periphery, but we do not know in which individual what operates and to which extent. And we all know that uncontrolled glycemic status leads to a multitude of complications, set of microvascular, set of macrovascular complications. So once the patient comes to us, whether a newly detected or a person who is coming to us who has been on treatment and not well controlled, at every point we need to holistically approach the patient, we need to assess and then devise our treatment plan. The assessment must include, along with his assessment of whether he has the onset of various complications, most importantly the ASCVD and the heart failure risks, the ASCVD risk factors and calculation of whether what would be the 10-year probability, because this is one of the most important comorbidity, staging of CKD if any, and the hypoglycemia risk if any, if at all he has features of autonomic neuropathy. Accordingly, we need to set our target goals, fasting plasma glucose, postprandial blood glucose, most importantly HbA1c, because HbA1c is the parameter which has been found in various landmark trials to be associated with microvascular complications, and then we need to devise our therapeutic treatment plan. So lifestyle management stays apart pharmacotherapy. Again, it needs to be modified depending upon the presence of CVD and the renal risk factors. Now, of all the glycemic parameters targets which we need, we have been discussing since the morning, it is the HbA1c rather, which determines what would be the risk of development of these complications. And we need to individually target the HbA1c values, whether we want to keep it on a less stringent goal or on a more stringent goal upon certain factors. Some can be modified and some majority cannot be modified. Most important being the age of presentation, the younger presentation, usually less than 55, the disease duration, if it is a lesser duration, long life expectancy, absence of comorbidities, absence of established any vascular risk factors, and if the patient is not having the risk of recurrent hypoglycemias and drug adverse effects, we can target the HbA1cs on a lower range. Now, then we need to initiate our therapy. Now, the traditional recommendation, as sir has already told, is the stepwise addition of drugs to metformin to maintain the HbA1c in target. Now, initially it was said that this step-up management protocol had the advantage that you can understand the positive and the negative effects of the new drugs and rather reduce the potential adverse effects of the drugs and the cost. Now came the concept of combination therapy right at the initial period, and the goal is rather more rapid attainment of the glycemic targets. And if you go for a later combination therapy, the longer durability of glycemic effect and the failure of the primary or rather the secondary drug therapies. Majority of the associations still say that metformin should be considered as the initial pharmacotherapy, monotherapy in T2DM, including ADA standard of care, which was given in 2023. As of yet, it has not revised. But we all know that if we go for this kind of a therapy, we see in our routine clinical practice that after a couple of months, right, 3 to 6 months, our targeted glycemic goals are rather not met. So if once we have the unmet clinical needs in T2DM due to this suboptimal glucose control, then it becomes very difficult because we have a difficulty in attaining the glycemic targets, ultimately leading to drug failures, onset of the complications with poor control. We know that there is onset of the macrovascular complications, and the South Asian phenotypes are rather more predisposed. And the notion that probably it will be cheaper to the pockets if we start with a single drug, but ultimately it leads to a high cost factor because multitude of complications later on sets in and the drug failure occurs. Most importantly to be remembered is the concept of legacy effect and metabolic memory. We have landmark trials, UKPDS in the T2DM and DCCT-ADIC in type 1 diabetics, where it was found that those arm of patients who had intensive therapy right from the time of diagnosis with the HbA1c values less than 7% had a lesser onset of macrovascular and microvascular complications, and rather those group of patients later on, if they did not have adequate control, the onset of complications were relatively less in those who had the conventional treatment modality. So the potential impact of this inertia on macrovascular complications is more, and it has been found, this is the data, where poor HbA1c control, usually in the first year of diagnosis, leads to an increase in the long-term CV risk. You can see how the legacy effect operates here, and there is the drive risk of complications. So those patients who have HbA1c more than 7% in the first year of therapy have got more chances of MI, stroke, and heart failure. Now, there has been a paradigm shift in the consideration of a combination therapy right from the beginning after the VERIFY trial in 2019, where the potential benefits of sustained and continuous disease control in early combination was found to offer the start of a new era in early diagnosis and intensive management to achieve the treatment aims of T2DM. Now, following this, there was a meta-analysis which was published in 2018, which was a meta-analysis which included around 36 studies where a monotherapy of metformin and another group of metformin plus DPP-4 inhibitors, metformin plus SGLT2 inhibitors, DPP and the sulfonylureas, DPP and thiazolidinians, multitude of studies were analyzed, and this meta-analysis concluded that in comparison to monotherapy, all initial combination therapies resulted in significant HbA1c reduction. So compared with metformin monotherapy, if the DPP4 inhibitor metformin combination, SGLT2 inhibitor metformin combinations had almost similar risk of hypoglycemia with the reduction of HbA1c, but this was lesser in that gross group. In the occurrence of hypoglycemia was lesser in this category of patients versus those who had a combination of sulfonylureas with metformin and thiazolidinediones with metformin. So another study following the VERIFY gave us a data about use of a combination of SGLT2 inhibitor, that is CANA, with metformin, and this study found out that those patients who had a 100 milligram CANA metformin combination or 300 milligram CANA metformin combination had significantly lower HbA1c versus the metformin monotherapy patients. So initial therapy with CANA plus metformin was rather more effective and well tolerated than monotherapy in the T2DM drug naive T2DM newly detected patients. Now this was a newly published data which was published in Lancet, where the legacy effect of hyperglycemia and use of SGLT2 inhibitors was studied. Now this was a retrospective data taken from around 2.5 lakh patients in Italy, where they found out that those group of patients who had a poor HbA1c outcomes in the first year, 0 to 1 year, 0 to 2 year, or 0 to 3 years of the initial stage had a poorer outcome in terms of the cardiovascular diseases when they were followed up for a long period of 6 years. And those group of patients who were exposed to SGLT2 inhibitors in the first 3 years of diagnosis had a better decrement in HbA1c and a reduction in occurrence of CV problems at the end of 5 to 6 years of follow years. So this study they interpreted that among patients with newly diagnosed T2DM and free of CVD at baseline, a poor glycemic control in the first 3 years after diagnosis is associated with the increased subsequent risk of cardiovascular diseases, and this association was found to be reduced in those group of patients who were exposed to SGLT2 inhibitors right in the first 3 years of the disease diagnosis. Now, these were all which we discussed about using a combination therapy with 2 drugs. Now, do we have data about a combination therapy with triple drugs? So this was a very old data published in around 2015, where the durability of a triple drug therapy with metformin, pioglitazone, and exenatide was found to be more effective rather than a sequential add-on in the new onset T2DM patient. It was the EDIC. And this study found out that the participants receiving triple therapy experienced significantly greater reduction in HbA1c than those receiving the conventional therapy group. Now, following this, there has been another data about the combination of metformin, sitagliptin, and lobeglitazone, which is a new glitazone in the pipeline. And the new finding from this study found that the combination treatment with metformin, sitagliptin, and lobeglitazone showed better efficacy and less hypoglycemia in comparison with the conventional approach of a sequential dose escalation with metformin and SUs in drug-naive T2DM patients, those who are having HbA1cs on the higher level. And this study led to the insight that how probably the findings of this study can lead to a change in our clinical practice in the upcoming time. A triple combination therapy with a DPP4 inhibitor preserves the beta cells with T2DM, and metformin acts at the peripheries and decreases the burden of insulin release on beta cells. Probably this would be a good option in those patients who have got higher HbA1c values. So look into this, as sir had already told, prior to 2012 and now after post-VERIFY, how the approach line in management is probably changing. So initially it was step up, step 1, step 2, step 3, where we had an add-on depending upon whether we are achieving the targeted HbA1c values with a monotherapy after 3 months. But now, following post-VERIFY, you need to have a shared decision making whether you need to consider an initial combination therapy right from the beginning, because always remember Defronzo's octet, or now probably the treacherous 13 or the 14 mechanisms which operate to cause T2DM, and we do not know where we are. So these are certain modifications in the latest ADA 2023 following the findings of VERIFY, Verify, which demonstrated that combination therapy in the initial stage is rather superior to sequential addition. But the demerit of this is that the results have not been generalized to other agents other than vildagliptin, but they do suggest that a more intense early treatment has got benefit and it should be considered, especially in those group of patients where HbA1c value is beyond 1.5 to 2% above the targeted range. Now, ADA in the year 2019-2020 recommended a combination therapy at the beginning if the HbA1c was beyond 9.5%, but now they have revised it and they have brought that below the, if above it is 1.5 to 2 above your targeted HbA1cs, you may consider initial combination therapies. And the recommendation for treatment intensification not meeting the treatment goals should not be delayed because the legacy effect does exist. The choice of medication needed to add to the initial therapy must be based on the individual preferences and the individual clinical characteristics. Most importantly, the presence or absence of ACVD or ACVD risk factors or CKD, along with that history of heart failures, and as sir has told, NAFALD, which has been modified to MAFALD these days. So these are the changes that ADA standard of care has recommended this year. And ACE glycemic control algorithm has already made a modification that if the entry HbA1c at the point of diagnosis is between 7.5 to 9%, you can initiate a dual therapy with metformin. And if the HbA1c goals are not achieved within 3 months, you can shift on to a triple therapy. And finally, if it's still not met, you can add on to the insulin therapy. So this is the history of a patient, the T2DM journey patient, how his journey was in the initial historical standard of care and now the new era after the new findings of the Verify. So rather than going for a step-up management where probably repeated treatment failure would rather increase the risk of onset of various micro and macrovascular complications, and there is a delayed intervention and risk of primary and secondary drug treatment failure does exist. The new era following post-Verify, where early combination therapy coupled with your patient attainment goals rather gives us a more durable glycemic efficacy which can be attained, prevents the delay in the intervention, and rather gives a better outcome for our patients. So there has been definitely a paradigm shift following this, but the debate still continues. Still there are two schools of thoughts, and though some people recommend that initial combination can be the right approach to achieve glycemic goals earlier and delay the deterioration of glycemic control. Most importantly, we all know that something called as glucotoxicity operates when the patient presents to us in the full-blown initial periods. So if we go for a combination, we can preserve the beta cells. And combination therapy is proposed to lead a faster and better achievement of the glycemic parameters. Initial combination therapies still are good to postpone the clinical inertia to the next decision point, but it does not eliminate. So most importantly, individualization of the therapy and setting, reaching the glycemic targets remains the mainstay of care. So to sum up, we know that the aim of T2DM management is to improve the quality of life and prevent chronic complications and premature mortality. Glucose management is the most important strategy, and attaining the HbA1c values is the most important one. It is usually approached by the step-up pattern along with LifeSide and a single drug, and then followed by a drug intensification. But following the paradigm shift of the Verified trial, the step-up approach of adding new treatments later on will probably will not give us enough of advantage if we rather go from a combination therapy right from the beginning. So early combination treatment strategies represent the beginning of a new era of early detection, diagnosis, and intervention for patients with T2DM, with the potential of preventing the progressive deterioration of glucose control in the forthcoming time periods and preventing the onset of microvascular complications and microvascular complications, of course. So the guiding principles, the 6 most important actions that a physician must consider in an early treatment strategy is strive, engage, initiate, monitor, regularly measure, and explain. So strive for an early detection and diagnosis of T2DM, engage with the patients to align their expectations from the point of diagnosis throughout the entire journey of the patient, and this will maintain adherence to therapy and attainment of glycemic goals and prevention of the complications and comorbidities. Initiate timely combination to maximize the advantageous outcomes for your patient. Monitor the patient's goals and monitor the patient's adherence to the regimen on an ongoing continuous basis. Regularly measure your glycemic parameters and the targets, and explain the patient the benefits of early intervention to improve the long-term outcomes ultimately and minimize the risk of treatment failures. So this is all. So we can take up any questions, whatever they are. Thank you for your patient hearing.
Any questions from the audience?
Combine 4 drugs. That is DPP-4, SGLT2 inhibitor, metformin, and
We can do
pioglitazone.
combine, sir. There was a lecture by Di Fronzo last year when the COVID period was going on. He says that you can combine up to 5 group of drugs. There is no data as of yet, but he says he is having ongoing trials which may come up. You can still combine. He's telling that target all the pathogenic mechanisms.
So, and we are having triple combination with reasonable price and add another pioglitazone.
So definitely, sir. But there is no there is no large data. Whatever data was available, what I searched, I have presented. But I have heard a lecture by Di Fronzo where he says that you can use 5 drugs right from the beginning.
Right. Thank you.
Anyone else?
One point that should be remembered is that if the level of blood sugar is very high, then we can think of adding 3, 4, 5 drugs. Otherwise, one should also remember the more number of drugs that we are using, there is more chances of adverse effects also. That should not be forgotten. A patient who is recently diagnosed with hemoglobin A1C around 7.5, I think 2 drugs are more than enough.
Sir, what adverse effects are we discussing about, sir?
Apart from hypoglycemia,
Hypoglycemia.
other drugs are other side effects, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, drug resist, so many possibilities are there. So when we add more drugs, the chances of adverse
So
effects,
especially with
apart
DPP-4 and metformin.
apart from hypoglycemia.
So, sir, I presume if you remove sulfonylurea, the other agents which are available to us usually do not cause hypoglycemia.
No, sir,
The
hypoglycemia.
is one adverse effect. Other than there are so many adverse effects.
Most common is the GERD effects. Metformin alone, only with metformin, if the metformin and the depends upon the preparation. More of impurities, majority of the patients, they will complain of gastric discomfort.
Exactly.
So if you add DPP-4 or alpha glucosidase, which is routinely used, so it's a problem with the GERD problem. That.
So I think we can round up over here. So madam has given us a very good insight into the initial combinations. Basically, it is, to summarize, it is like if you see the Nat Geo Wild, the zebra's back kick is very fatal and it can even harm the healthiest of the lions. So if you think you are a lion and diabetes is the zebra, you have to catch it by the nose and it has to be killed instantly at the first sight. Otherwise, it can injure you. I think that is what the latest recommendations say.
Absolutely.
We can wind up over here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Speaker ma'am. Thank you, chairpersons. I would like to request you to kindly felicitate Dr. Ipshita Mishra.